Good day, everybody. It's Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel. We have a huge update for Social Security benefits. We have a new proposal which could add extra checks and extra benefits to Social Security beneficiaries, and we expect this would include SSI and SSDI as well. So let's discuss the details, but before we jump into it, do me a quick favor, hit like, hit subscribe, and share this channel with anyone who you think might find this helpful. This is a community for seniors, and my job is to be a voice for you and make sure that President Biden keeps his promise that he made on the campaign trail to increase Social Security, increase SSI and SSDI, and even approve a stimulus check for seniors by the end of 2021. So my job is to be an advocate for you, and all I ask is for your support. If you really want to support my work, subscribe to my second channel. The link to that is going to be in the comments of this video, and on that channel we're going to play bingo, play the lottery, play casino games. I'm going to be on camera with a chat, so you can chat with me, we can all hang out. It's kind of more of a community, like an entertainment channel, a place to have fun, almost to forget about all the serious things we talk about on this channel. But with that said, let's jump into the updates. But first, let's do a quick update on daily trending news. Now, one thing that's currently trending is apparently President Trump and his administration were kind of misleading the general public as to how severe his infection was when he was sick with COVID-19. Now, this article is titled, "Trump's Blood Oxygen Level in COVID Bout was Dangerously Low," said one of his former aides. Now, President Donald Trump's blood oxygen level sank to a precariously low level after he announced that he had tested positive for the illness last year, according to a new book by Mark Meadows, who was his former chief of staff. So this information is coming out by someone who was very close to President Trump and was his chief of staff. Now, a lot of people say that President Trump lied about this for a couple of reasons. One, anytime a president is sick, especially when they're in their 70s, they want to downplay how sick they are because this could cause political instability, right? It could make the United States look weak. It could look kind of chaotic if you're not sure, could the president potentially pass away, things like that, right? So for political reasons, it makes sense. Now, other people are saying that President Trump was downplaying it because he had been downplaying the pandemic the entire time, so he kind of would have looked kind of dumb if then he got really, really sick and then he was worried himself about potentially passing away from the illness, if that kind of makes sense. Because if he's downplaying it on one side, but then on the other side he's getting severe illness, it kind of would have made him look bad. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments, folks. Do you think he was doing this for the right reasons to kind of portray political stability and strength for the United States? Or do you think he was doing this to kind of cover his own behind after downplaying the pandemic? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In any case, let's play this clip from CNN. I have a feeling they're probably going to be slamming Trump on this one. But again, I show both sides. I show Fox News and CNN. So don't kill me in the comments. I like to show both sides of the story. So let's take a quick look, see what CNN said. Then we'll jump right into the update on Social Security benefits and the potential for increased payments in 2022.
Severity of then President Donald Trump. So this morning, brand new details on the severity of then President Donald Trump's bout with COVID, according to a new book by his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. So the New York Times' Maggie Haberman reports, quote, he described walking into Mr. Trump's private residence to see him in a T-shirt, sitting up in bed. It was the first time I'd seen him in anything other than a golf shirt or a suit jacket, Mr. Meadows wrote. Trump had red streaks in his eyes, Mr. Meadows recounted, and his hair was a mess from the hours he'd spent getting Regeneron in bed. On the walk out to his helicopter, he lost so much strength that he dropped the briefcase he had planned to carry outside, where reporters were lined up to observe him, Mr. Meadows recalled. Maggie Haberman, who wrote the details of Meadows' book, joins me now. She's a CNN political analyst and New York Times Washington correspondent. The author of this book, again, renowned left-wing scribe, Mark Meadows.
Donald Trump blurbed this book. He's endorsed this book. He endorsed it several weeks ago. He has since tried to say, parts of this were fake news when some of us reported last week on the fact that Meadows acknowledged that Donald Trump had had a positive coronavirus test long before they told us that he was sick. Meadows then said, well, there was also a negative test. Meadows says all kinds of other things in this book. And he called his own book fake news at one point a couple days ago, I should note. But in the book, because I've seen it, and this is not fake news, John, because a bunch of us knew this at the time and were told it was not true by them, tried to report as much as we could. He was much sicker than we were told. His oxygen level, his blood oxygen level was 86. That's really, really low. He was, talking about how he had lost all of his muscle strength, according to Meadows. The doctors were worried that it might be a weeks-long hospital stay. So this is all really new information, or at least new information officially. There's some that we've reported at various points. It's unbelievable to me that Mark Meadows is putting this in a book for which I presume he got paid after he did not tell the truth to the public over and over about this last year.
If you'll permit me, this seems to really tick you off. I'm not sure I've seen you. This seems to tick you off.
It does. Look, because there's a couple of things here. We know that Donald Trump has a problem with the truth. This has been established over and over again. Mark Meadows also has a problem with the truth, and that has been established over and over again. And when you have a president who has this particular issue, having a chief of staff who has this issue is a problem as well. Whatever the complaints were about Trump's 3 previous chiefs of staff, this actually really wasn't one of them in the same way. This was information about how sick the leader of the free world was. He was in very, very bad shape.
Okay, so apparently President Trump's oxygen levels dropped to 86. And to put it in perspective, anything below 90, even in the low 90s, is considered very, very dangerous. I mean, when you hear stories about people going to sleep with a little bit of shortness of breath and then never waking up, that's terrifying. But that happens when someone's oxygen levels is below 90. And this is what was happening to former President Trump. Again, CNN is slamming President Trump and Mark Meadows, saying they were lying, but some people are saying they had to, otherwise it would have looked chaotic and made the U.S. look unstable, which kind of makes sense. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, before we jump into Social Security benefits, a couple more quick notes on trending news. Now, at this point, most of you know that Chris Cuomo, brother of Andrew Cuomo, was fired from CNN. And apparently this kind of became a personal situation where he lied to the president of CNN. Now, Chris Cuomo had the most popular TV show on CNN. So this is huge. It wasn't just because he's Andrew Cuomo's brother, but the fact that he had the most highly rated show on CNN and he got fired. So apparently now there's accusations against Chris Cuomo himself, saying that he might have engaged in some misconduct, but we won't go too deep into that for this video. But at the end of the day, the president of CNN said that he lied to him because he gave him his word that he was not helping his brother when it came to the investigations that was going on with Andrew Cuomo. And he came out and said, the president said, that he felt like he lied to him. So he gave him his word, and quite frankly, he felt betrayed by that. So at that point, it became an issue of this man needed to be fired. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Now, one thing I've been doing lately is showing the best cities to retire in and the worst cities to retire in. And we started with a list of the 25 worst cities to retire in. And coming in at 25 was Massachusetts, but it was tied with another state. So let's see what the other state was. And this is Nevada. So Nevada has been labeled the 25th worst state to retire in. So let's see why. Nevada welcomes a flood of tourists each year to its stunning parks and the glitzy resorts of Las Vegas. But you shouldn't retire there just because it's a nice place to visit. The Silver State has no state income tax and low property taxes, so you won't lose too much money to the government. Instead, you'll be losing it to your mortgage, considering the high price of the average home. Nevada has relatively few physicians for the size of its population. The FBI data shows higher than average crime rates. So Nevada actually attracts a lot of retirees because there's no state income tax. You can keep more of your income in retirement, and there's very low property tax. I can relate to that because here in Chicago, we have insane property tax. But I guess those are the pros, but the cons here is basically that the average home is ridiculously expensive, and there's really not a lot of doctors out there compared to the amount of people that live there, so you might have to wait a while to get into your appointments. Now, that's pretty interesting. Now, if you're from Nevada, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you retired there? And what do you think about being retired in Nevada? Is it as bad as they say in this article? Or do you think it's a pretty good place to retire? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Okay, folks, let's jump right into the update on Social Security benefits and a new proposal that would give seniors extra Social Security benefits in 2022. Now, last year we had a huge push for $200 per month until the pandemic was over. That was expected to last 2 years and give seniors an average of $2,400 per year, or a grand total of $4,800 if it lasted the entire year. Now, that never fully came to fruition, but we're still hoping to get monthly checks for seniors, hopefully in this next stimulus package if Bernie Sanders is able to get that done. Now, although we have a massive COLA coming of 5.9%, it's still not enough because inflation has been so rampant. Seniors are paying way too much for everything, for gas, for food, for rent. So we've had a bunch of new proposals to permanently increase Social Security benefits. And one of the most recent ones we just had was from Representative Al Lawson, who wants to do a small increase to Social Security benefits while extending the solvency for an extra 10 years. So let's quickly take a look at what this plan does. Now, he is in the House of Representatives, a Democrat from Florida. His name is Al Lawson, and he recently proposed a Social Security legislation which was scored by the Social Security Administration's office and shown to potentially extend the solvency for an additional 10 years. Now, the problem we have here, obviously, is Social Security is currently paying out more than it takes in because the cost of living is going up. More people are retiring, but we don't have as many people working, and wages are not going up enough to account for this, right? So as we tax people, those wages that are being taxed are not high enough to pay for all of the people that are retired. So his plan is to raise the income rate by lifting the cap on the maximum taxable earnings. Now, currently what's happening is if you make more than about $140,000 per year, you no longer pay into the Social Security tax. He wants to change that and make it so that everyone who makes over $250,000 per year pays into this tax. He wants to reduce the 75-year deficit by applying this payroll tax to earnings over $250,000. So that means when you see people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, these people are billionaires and they barely pay into the Social Security tax. He wants to change that. So every time you see Elon Musk selling $10 billion in stock, a huge percentage of that will go into the Social Security Trust Fund. So that would be really, really good. So a couple of things he wants to do to increase payments is he wants to change the COLA formula to something called the CPIE, which takes into account expenses that elderly people face, specifically paying more in rent and paying more money for medical expenses. These things have been skyrocketing way more than anything else, but they're not really included in that way in the COLA formula. So this would change that, giving you a larger COLA payment every single year. He also wants to help widows. So when their spouse passes away, they're left with one check, and they usually end up getting about half of what they were getting before when they had two checks. He wants to change that and increase it so when your spouse passes away, you'll get 75% of what you used to get when you had two checks, instead of basically getting like 50%. If that kind of makes sense. So helping out widows so they're not forced to live on half of what they were used to. He also says he wants to create a special minimum benefit, but doesn't say exactly how much it would be, but he does say it would be indexed by the growth in average wages. Now, that's something that would have been really nice this year, as wages across this country have gone up insanely throughout this pandemic, but of course, Social Security benefits have not. Now, although he wants to create a minimum benefit, he doesn't say exactly how much it would be. So that's kind of the biggest problem here, right? President Biden said he wanted to do something similar to this, but increase the minimum benefit to 125% of the federal poverty level, which right now would add up to about $1,500 or $1,600 per month. That would be huge because a lot of people who watch my channel get $800, $900, or $1,000 per month. So raising that to $1,500 as a minimum would almost double your Social Security benefit, especially if you make like $800 a month, right? So that is something that we would need clarity on. This plan by Al Lawson, what is the minimum benefit? It doesn't exactly say, but we're hoping it would be somewhere around the minimum that President Biden created or is trying to implement in his campaign, right? This is something he promised. He told seniors, he told SSI and SSDI, we're going to raise benefits to 125% of the federal poverty level across the board. That would almost double Social Security benefits for millions of Americans in this country. That would go such a long way in helping people on SSI and SSDI. but he still has not fulfilled that promise. So the good news is it seems like every month we have a new proposal to increase Social Security benefits, and we have Bernie Sanders who is pushing for an increase in benefits as well. And President Biden said that they're going to do another stimulus package in 2022. So what we're thinking here is hopefully these permanent increases in benefits will make it into the next stimulus package in 2022. And hopefully, in the meantime, we'll get a stimulus check for seniors and SSDI and SSI in this current stimulus package, which is what Bernie Sanders is trying to push. So that stimulus package for seniors would almost be like a temporary little help, give you a couple $1,000s to help you out until benefits are permanently increased, if that kind of makes sense. But with that said, Democrats are currently negotiating the current stimulus package, and we should have a lot of updates in the next couple of weeks as they are trying to get this done before Christmas. So don't forget to subscribe, and I will keep you posted as things develop. Now that's about it for the update on Social Security for this video. So to end this video, I'm going to leave you with the rest of this clip from CNN discussing what was happening with President Trump when they misled the American people, telling them that he wasn't really that sick when in fact his oxygen levels were dangerously low. Again, a lot of people say he was doing this for good reasons, to create stability politically. Otherwise, our nation would have looked weak if people were worried about our president passing away. On the other side, some people are slamming President Trump, saying that he is a habitual liar and should have told the American people the truth. And some people are slamming Mark Meadows because he put this in his book, which I'm sure he's making millions of dollars on, right? When he lied to the American people, Mark Meadows, so he lied, and then he puts it in his book, puts the truth in the book, and make millions of dollars. So if you were going to lie, whether it was for good reasons or bad, then why tell people now just to make money, right? So people are slamming him for that. So with that said, let's see what CNN had to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.
I understand not wanting to create a panic. That is always something that White House officials have to deal with when they're dealing with an ill president. But in this case, there is such an indignance with which the White House insisted we were all wrong when we were asking about that first positive coronavirus test, about how sick he was, and because Meadows releases the information, but he wraps it in this bubble of we had to, I mean, if you read the book, and I don't know how many people actually will, but if you read the book, you know, he sort of writes in there, oh, you know, this is, we had to do these things basically because the liberal media might say worse things about him, say he's in worse shape. It's a hard to process argument.
You say Trump blurbed the book here. Do we know what the former president or how he feels about being described in a T-shirt sitting in bed with his hair all messed up and red eyes?
He was already not happy that Meadows had reopened this issue of the positive test and sort of when it was taken, he told aides he felt that Meadows was quote unquote dumb for doing this. You know, I don't know if he had broader thoughts than that, but certainly the reaction among former Trump aides last night on reading these physical descriptions that Meadows went ahead with was stunned. And there's no way that Trump is going to be happy with this. And there's no way Trump knew that was in the book.
Stand by for one moment, if you will, because I think Brianna's going to dive into more of the medical news that came out of this.
Yeah, let's get the clinical perspective on just what all this means with CNN medical analyst Dr. Jonathan Reiner. He's also a professor of medicine and surgery at George Washington University. Okay, Dr. Reiner, 86% oxygen level. What does that mean?
It means the president should be hospitalized. It means he was sick. It means that he had COVID-19 pneumonia. And we know his doctors were essentially panicked about him because they threw at him essentially the kitchen sink of experimental therapies. So he received remdesivir, but he also received steroids, which the actually White House initially declined to tell the press. And then they also treated him with monoclonal antibodies, which were not yet approved by the FDA. So they were so worried about the president that they sought approval and delivery for this experimental therapy because they feared for the president's life.
Regeneron while he was in bed, to be clear. This was before he went to the hospital. What does that tell you?
Right. Well, Regeneron, the monoclonal antibodies from Regeneron are a very effective therapy for people, you know, who are sick early in their illness, who have not yet developed their own effective antibody response. So it tells me that they worried about the survival of the president. But there's another revelation in that book which describes the White House doctors at some point considering just putting him on oxygen in the White House and hoping for the best, which is shockingly reckless. The president of the United States was 74 years old and obviously clearly obese. Obesity is a risk factor for mortality, as is age over 70. So he had multiple risk factors for dying of this virus. Then they demonstrated that his oxygenation level, his pulse oxygenation level of 86%, which is dangerously low, those should have triggered an immediate admission to Walter Reed without hesitation. I mean, the president was in danger of dying.
And all of the lies here, how infuriating is that, knowing that you had White House officials and even the doctor involved in all of this pushing back on the real picture that reporters were inquiring about?
Well, that is infuriating. If you look at the press conferences that happened on Saturday, the day after the president was admitted to the hospital, they all downplayed his illness. They made it sound like he was busy, managing the levers of government, when indeed he was on oxygen in the hospital fighting for his life. But what's much more infuriating to me, and what really angers me, is that the White House physician and the White House chief of staff, 5 days earlier, knew that the president had tested positive for COVID. And he had tested positive for COVID with a sensitive PCR test. Now, whether a subsequent less accurate rapid antigen test showed that he was negative, that would not have been sufficient to prove that the president was negative. So the president, who was already symptomatic, tested positive for COVID with a PCR test. The White House medical unit knew that the president was positive for COVID. The chief of staff knew that he was positive for COVID, yet they hid that from the public. The Washington Post estimates that the president exposed at least 500 people to the virus. We know that at least 7 people tested positive from the Amy Coney Barrett event the day that the president tested positive on September 26th. We know that Chris Christie, who prepped the president the next day, not only tested positive, but required almost a 10-day hospitalization in New Jersey because of the severity of his illness. And then the Trump team went ahead and debated former Vice President Biden 3 days later, exposing Mr. Biden and his whole team to COVID, despite assurances that everyone associated with that team would test negative. And then one more thing, the entire Trump team came in sort of defiantly unmasked and then declined masks offered to them by the Cleveland Clinic staff, which was hosting the event.
No, incredibly reckless.